Hello and welcome to Star Xpose TV. I'm Aldwyn Altuney, and it's with great pleasure today that I introduce a fantastic performer coming to us live from Sydney. His name is Stewart D'Arrietta, and he's going to be bringing his My Leonard Cohen show to Twin Towns coming up this Saturday night, and it's a fantastic show and you're going to absolutely love it. And Stewart is a very seasoned performer. He's been around for a long time. He is so experienced. He's going to be sharing his story in the entertainment industry today. Hello and welcome, Stewart.
Hey, Aldwyn, how are you?
Very good, thanks. Thanks so much for coming on board as our guest today.
No, thank you for having me. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. You're welcome. I interviewed you many years ago when you were doing your Looking Through a Glass Onion show at the Arts Centre.
At the Gold Coast Arts Centre, was it?
Yes, it was at the Gold Coast Arts Centre.
It might have been the Tom Waits show.
Yes,
I remember
Yes, I remember the Tom Waits show.
They called Tom Waits for No Man.
Yes, you did both of them.
Yeah, it could have been also, and it's called Lennon Through a Glass Onion now. So
right, Lennon Through a Glass Onion. Yeah, I remember both those shows coming through, and both excellent shows. And now you're doing a Leonard Cohen show, and Leonard Cohen sadly left us and died in 2016, November 7, after a fall at his home, which is very sad. He's an absolute legend in the entertainment industry, and I think it's fantastic that you're keeping some of his spirit alive. So can you just share with us a little bit about how you first started in the entertainment industry and what got you into music in the first place?
How I first started? Well, I first started playing in bands when I was 14, and my mother thought it was a good idea because it kept me off the streets. Well, actually, it put me right onto the streets. But having said that, I put myself through uni. I did arts law at Sydney Uni, and when I was at university, I put myself playing in bands and that, and I always just thought it was a sideline, you know. And then when I graduated from law, I put this in the show. Actually, I made the decision to secure my future and become a musician, and so I didn't like being a lawyer or anything about it. So I started really when I was about 28 years old. I started in the music industry. And I got a contract with Polygram when I was about 30. I had a solo career for a while, and then I set up a band called Big Storm, which was with Warner Brothers Electra Asylum. And then after that, I met up with John Waters in '92, and he introduced me to theatre with the show which we're still doing today, which was at that time called Looking Through a Glass Onion. So it all started really from that point, and I'm still doing it to this day.
Fantastic. Wow. From law to music. And most people would think, well, you know, music is such a tough industry to make a living out of, let alone be successful in. There's so many fantastic performers out there. So that really is a bit of a left of field decision there, because law, of course, is pretty much guaranteed income, isn't it, mostly?
Well, but it depends what I think what you're good at. I've always wanted to do something that I'm good at. I'm good at this. I don't think I'd be a very good lawyer. So that's what compelled me to involve myself in music. It's more the playing of it, the writing of it. It's not so much the business of it. I mean, I've always loved music, and I know it is a difficult business. You know, there's no denying that, making a living out of it. But I've managed up till now. I put my daughter through, private schools and things like that. So it's I've got nothing to complain about. It's been I've had a great life.
And how hard was it to get your first record deal? What was that process?
It was really hard. At that time, I was into a bunch of African musicians, and I tried to make an album that was somewhat polyrhythmic, that had the kind of African influence in it. And at that time, it was, not really seen to be a very viable commercial scenario. So hang on, can you turn that down there? Anyway, sorry. So yeah, it was it was a difficult start. I mean, it's never easy in the music industry. You've got to always, reinvent yourself. And I'm still going through that process today. I've started up a new show, which I used the title of an old Tom Waits show, Belly of a Drunken Piano. I'm writing a musical with a guy in New York. I also write with a guy here in Sydney called Louis Nowra. We've got a musical starting up at the end of the year called Sherlock and Me. Starts at the Fitzroy Theatre. I mean, you constantly got to be working at it. Nothing comes to you in this business. Maybe if you're beautiful, good looking, and you've been on one of those shows like X Factor or The Voice, stuff does come to you. But I started quite late in the industry at the age of 28. And so for me, it's always been about the music, not about, fame or anything like that. The other thing about the music is getting the respect from your peers. By peers, I mean those other musicians you work with who you know to be really great musicians. And I managed to be able to get that from the people I work with. And I work with really great musicians. I mean, the band I'm taking up to Twin Towns, there's 7 of us on stage. Each one of us a master of their own instrument. So, it's great when you have a situation where you're working with wonderful people who are also exponents of their instruments.
Absolutely, I look forward to that. Can you mention any names of who's coming with you? Yeah,
well, I've got Hamish Stewart on drums. Hamish is most probably one of the top drummers in this country. I have Victor Rounds. He's extraordinary. He's Fijian by birth and an extraordinary musician. I have John Bettison on guitar, great guitar player. I have Stephanie Zaka, who plays violin. She also plays with the Sydney Synth. I have a guy called Michael Kluger, who I went to law school with. He's a psychiatrist, but he manages to put down that baton of being a psychiatrist, and he works with me, and he plays the piano accordion like a master. I have a girl called Jo Elms who sings backing vocals with me, who's fantastic. Have I left out anyone? It's always hard to remember everyone's names who's in the band. But I think that's about 7 people, yeah, and myself.
Fantastic. And how did you meet all of them?
Well, I've known Hamish, the drummer, since we were kids, since we were like early 20s. Victor, I've known all these people for quite a long time. I met Stephanie Zaka, the violin player, when we were doing Lemon Through a Glass Onion, and we had a string quartet in it. That was back most probably in 2000, and we struck up a friendship. I mean, the thing about all these people, we were all close friends too, almost like a family on the road. So, and Michael Kluger, we went to Sydney Uni together. He was doing medicine, I was doing law, and he always played the squeeze box, And he purchased this piano accordion that has all these sounds in it, like, saxophone, clarinet. It's an extraordinary instrument he's got. So he's able to fill out the canvas of the music in an incredible way. And he's an extraordinary player at the same time. So, yeah, we all met through our lives. I've met most of them through music. But Michael I met, just socially, and our relationships developed from there.
Okay, fantastic. And your bio is pretty phenomenal, I must say. You have done a hell of a lot. You were in great demand as the piano man, it says in your bio. Entertaining. Yeah,
well, that's what I started out doing when I was 28. I was married, and I needed to make a living, and I was piano bar player around town in Sydney, playing at a place like Jamison Street, and I was also playing at a place called Rogues. And I can't say it was the best time of my life, because it was more often. I remember one night I used to drink so much to be able to have to do this gig. And I remember one night looking at the piano and thinking, can I really play this thing? And then I just put my hands on the opening chord and I just took myself away. So it wasn't good for my liver that time. And I don't think it was musically a great enhancing period.
are you fully self-taught, or did you have some good trainers over time?
What was that last bit? Sorry.
Are you fully self-taught? Did you teach yourself?
No. I had classical training up to the age of 14, and then I discovered rock and roll. You know, it was a wonderful time in music, 1968 till early 70s with, well, I suppose it was heralded with Woodstock. And suddenly there was all this incredible music around. I mean, I was a huge fan of Jimi Hendrix, Cream, all these bands. I played in a band, there was hardly any keys in it. I remember I asked the guys, Procol Harum had just brought out a song called Whiter Shade of Pale. I said, we've got to do this song. He said, no, it's a ballad. I said, it's a great song. And then there was a guy on the side of the stage. He said, I've got a band. You can play that in my band. It was an extraordinary time to learn music. And of course, during those days, nothing was programmed. Like there was no such thing as a drum loop or anything like that. Everything was played on a record. So during the 80s, I worked a lot as a session musician, working for all sorts of different types of guys, one of which was a guy called Terry Hannigan, who lives up there in the Gold Coast, actually. And he used to have a jingle writing business. And working with him was quite an experience, I can tell you that. He was such a character. So, it is an extraordinary thing that everything in those days was played as opposed to programmed with a computer, which is the case today. Most of the stuff you hear on radio is stuff that's come out of a computer.
It's kind of like once upon a time, stunts were done the original way by the actors, and now we have a whole lot of stunt people doing the stunts. So these things have definitely changed.
Things have changed big time. Remember, when I was a kid, the biggest technology was an answer phone where you come home and you press a button and people will leave their messages for you. Now, of course, today, everybody is available to you on your computer. Look at me, I'm talking to you through a computer and we're hooking up. I mean, in those days, God, there was bug all. And you know, the interesting thing about the days that I lived when I grew up, you only listened to music when you wanted to listen to music. Today, you are infiltrated with music all the bloody time. I mean, you go into a supermarket, and suddenly you'll hear a song that you absolutely hate, but it'll stick in your head forever. Well, for another 10 minutes. So, and also the cars passing by, doof, doof, the level of volume coming out of it. When I was a kid, you go home and there was a sacred moment where you put on the album and you'd listen to it. And the computer games or anything like it was only music. That was your direct contact with direct technology. So it was a very different time to grow up in.
Yes. Yeah, well, vinyl is coming back, they say. So there's a whole resurgence happening.
Yeah, well, it's great with vinyl because you can look at it and you can read the credits. You have to get out a magnifying glass with a CD. And I'll tell you, today, most people download it and there's no information whatsoever about the track. So I can see vinyl making its way back. It's a bit more expensive, of course, but I think vinyl is great. I actually got out all my vinyl and bought a turntable and started listening to my music on turntable. Yeah.
Well, just in the last week, actually, Aldi have been selling jukeboxes with turntables and also turntables for $100 to $400. So they're, Aldi.
Really?
Aldi is selling.
Fantastic! They're selling jukeboxes.
Fantastic. Yeah, I actually bought one for $400, and it's great. Yeah, it's great. And the good thing about it, it's a turntable. It's got a CD player, and you can also Bluetooth music to it, and you can also put music through a USB through it as well. So it's got the old technology and the new technology, and it's got all the flashing lights, and it's.
And is it a big thing like an old jukebox, or is it a small thing?
No, it's probably it's about half. Well, I'm 5'7". It's about half my height, so it probably comes up to about my chest, probably from the ground. So it's still a good size. It's pretty funky. Yeah, it's pretty cool. So check it out, Jukeboxes by Aldi. There you go, promo for Aldi today.
And do they play LPs or just singles?
Yeah, they play LPs. Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, really cool.
Get one of those.
Yeah, so check it out. It might have been a limited limited time promo, but you could get it online too if you just Google the, you know, jukebox. You'll see it online if you Google jukebox or Aldi or yeah, it's really cool. So yes, vinyl is coming back. I co-host a show called Tech Webcast as well, and we do quite a lot of shows on vinyl and with vinyl artists, because there's a lot more people on YouTube now that are reviewing the old vinyl records, and so that, you know, I think people are wanting that kind of, you know, that I don't know, that touchy-feely thing that you get from vinyl, and that the reminiscence.
Also, it sounds in a lot of ways it sounds better too.
Yeah, and I think there's something kind of romantic about vinyl. You know, it's probably like Leonard Cohen. Leonard Cohen's, you know, a really romantic, I would say, artist, and some of his songs are just absolutely gorgeous. And some people would say a very dark artist as well. And as Tom Waits, I would say, is quite a dark artist too. So is there any particular reason that you've been attracted to these kinds of guys with your performances?
I've always liked guys who are left of centre. You know, I've been asked to do other artists who are very middle of the road, and I don't know what it is about me, but I do like the underbelly of society being expressed by a songwriter. From Waits. Waits does more of the underbelly. Cohen gets deep into the feelings of the modern man, and he still has a very Jewish sense of humour, and he has some comedy in his songs. It's very subtle. But he's a lot. I think he's a very romantic artist. Yeah. You know, I mean, some songs. There's a song of his called "Dance Me to the End of Love," and I explain in the show that, you know, a lot of people use that song as they get married to it, and, you know, all kinds of things to it. You know, it's got this special significance. But he wrote that song after he found out that Jewish string quartets were used to serenade fellow Jewish inmates of concentration camps into the gas chambers. So it's a song about the final dance of life. And when you know that song takes on a whole different meaning.
Wow. Well, I just got goosebumps as you said that. So that's definitely taken on a whole new meaning for me. And I was listening to that song just earlier because you've got a promo video out with that song, of you performing that song in your My Leonard Cohen show.
I suppose you got to remember he was born in 1934. So I'd imagine around the dinner table there would have been a lot of talk about what was going on for the Jews in Europe at that time. War ended at 45. He would have been 11 years old. So there would have been a lot of residue in the man himself. I mean, he was a pretty depressed cat. He didn't get over his depression, I think, till his mid-60s. He actually went to a place in India to be the student of a guy called Ramesh Balsekar. He was there for a year. It was actually there during that time that the depression that had dogged him all his life was lifted from him. So, you know, and he died at the age of 82. And in those concerts you see of him, like one in England in the O2, his humour comes across in these little spoken bits between songs. Yeah, he was a character who suffered a lot, I think, which is, of course, very tragic. I mean, unfortunately, I lost a mate just recently, Rory O'Donoghue, who necked himself, and I'd seen him 2 weeks earlier, and he was a wonderful guitar player. He worked with Graham Bond on Arnie Jack. He was his sidekick. And when you saw him, he was this magnificent guy. He was as fit as a Mallee bull. He rode bikes. He did all these, you know, incredible contests, you know, physical contests, and looked really young. I mean, you know, he was in his 68, I think he looked in his 40s, and he just necked himself. He suffered from depression, such shocking depression, and of course, it's an area that you don't even know how deep people get depressed. I'm very blessed that, you know, I don't have that, but it exists quite a bit in our society.
Well, the stats in Australia is about 2 in 5 people have depression or anxiety that we know about, which is pretty staggering. So 20% of the population has it, and a lot of people are very highly medicated, and the biggest side effect of antidepressant medication is suicide, interestingly. So it's a very sad thing. I've had a few friends that have died as well in a similar way, had depression and killed themselves. And it's I think, you know, I think we need to just keep getting more positive stories out there. I think the negative news that we hear, I think that has a lot to do with people's depression. I think people just lose hope, and they, you know, they're not doing what they love doing, possibly, or maybe just I don't know, they have this darkness that comes out sometimes, and I can relate to that. And there's lots of different things people can do to move through their depression. But yeah, it's incredibly sad when people have it. I think if people do have depression, actually one of the things that they say is good for people who have depression is actually to get creative. So if Leonard Cohen had depression, maybe his music was a way of him treating himself from his depression.
Yeah, maybe he wouldn't have written such incredible deep lyrics if he'd been a happy guy. Just as well he was miserable.
Well, it's funny how many people can relate, can't they, to deep.
Yeah. Who knows? Like William Shakespeare might have been a really depressed cat too.
Sure, possibly. Yeah. And when did you first hear about Leonard Cohen? Have you been a fan for years, or?
No, actually, a couple of things happened in my life. I was approached by a guy called Zoltan Kotetzky, who asked me to do this show, and my daughter had travelled through Europe listening totally to Leonard Cohen. The only real album of his that I was au fait with was his first album, Songs of Leonard Cohen, and I used to think of him pretty much as a slasherist type artist. And then I got into his music, and I found that not to be the case. And I reveled in it. And also I thought, geez, if I approached these songs as if I was a musical director in a studio, and Leonard's come into the studio and said to me, well, I've got this song, and he plays it on guitar, and I would reinterpret it. So I've reinterpreted most of these songs of Leonard's and done them in the way that I, would have liked to have done them. I mean, the whole thing about music, it's an organic thing. It's not something fixed in time and space like a painting or a sculpture. It's an art form that is, it's malleable, and it can be woven to be any way you want it. So a lot of that is my interpretation. In this show, there's a lot of my interpretation of his songs.
Nice. So there'll be a bit of ad-libbing, will there, with some of the music in the show?
No, there's not much ad-libbing. It's all set in concrete with the grooves that I've established with the band. And the most important thing for me is the groove. There's got to be a really good groove in it. So a lot of the stuff, some of it I take down to New Orleans. And yeah. It's, as I say, it's my interpretation of his music, but there's not that much ad-libbing.
Okay.
Not that much.
Okay. Or improvisation, not much improvisation happening.
No, there maybe occasionally might be a bit of improvisation by me. But I like to try and keep it down to, as set.
Yeah, awesome. And the show itself, you're actually sharing a bit of Leonard's story as well, right? So you the story. Yeah.
I tell him a bit about his life and his motivations behind the songs, like that story I just told you about, Dance Me to the End of Love. I recite a bit of his poetry. I take people on a journey through his life and, reflect the music that is appropriate at that time in the show.
What do you hope people will leave with at the end of the show?
Well, hopefully they'll, I've played this show in Edinburgh twice, and after a show I'd come out and, the Scottish people, and a lot of people used to think of this, they'd be dragged by their wives or whatever the case may be to this show and kind of protest, thinking that this is slasherist music. But generally they're all really happy with it, and they come back and they have a revision on the man and his music. So hopefully some of it's very kind of moving. Some of the songs are very moving. I get tears in the audience. I get, you know, laughter. I try and delve myself into the whole compass of human emotions. So, you know, you want to be, when you go to a show, you want to come out feeling damn good. And you don't want to come out feeling depressed. So generally, most people come out of the show feeling pretty damn good.
Yeah, awesome. It's like a good
I mean,
movie,
it's not going to be a life-changing event, I don't think. But, you know, you never know.
Well, like a good movie will lead you to tears, and it will have you laughing, and it will have you going through all the gamut of human emotions. And at the end, generally, we want a happy ending, right?
Yeah. You don't want the hero to die. You know. You're right. Sometimes I love those movies where the ending's like held in. It's you don't know how it's gone from there. You know, you're kind of left in suspense. I kind of like those endings. It's more like in a French film. You know, the French don't really go for happy endings.
Yes, the Europeans do that a lot. Yeah. And then all the sequel type movies, you know, that's kind of after 3 hours or whatever, you kind of think, oh damn, what happens next?
Yeah.
And they keep you hanging on.
Yeah.
So back to now Lemon Through a Glass Onion. That's you just celebrated your 25th year anniversary.
Yeah.
One of the longest running stage shows in Australia, and you just sell out season at the Sydney Opera House. Can you explain a bit about what that was like when that happened?
Well, the story behind that is John and I worked for a very short period in 1985 together, and he had this idea of doing this show about John Lennon. And in 1992, he was offered this space in Woolloomooloo. It was a theatre restaurant. It was called the Tilbury. It doesn't exist anymore. The Tilbury exists, but not in the format that it was in those days. So he was offered a month season there. And being out of work, he jumped on it and he asked me to get involved. So John wrote the monologue, and I kind of structured it with him, and also didn't rearrange, but arranged the songs to work as also underscore and also to run into songs. So we've had we've had a wonderful time, 5 years. We played it all over the world, New York, Japan, England. And I suppose it's the show that got me into theatre. I love the idea that you got a scenario where people are sitting in the seat, so they've got to listen to you. Oops, hang on, I'll just get rid of that. Maybe a sec.
Background sounds going on there. Look at that, because this is a live show. I'm doing everything live here today if you're watching this. So we do not edit this at all. This is pure live stream. So back to you, Stewart.
That's cool. Yeah, that was a phone call. Sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah.
All good. So we're talking about Lennon Through a Glass Onion, John Lennon show that you did. So you did the sellout season. So
we're actually touring that. We're touring that for the next month, Fridays and Saturdays, for various venues around Sydney. In fact, on Friday night, and then I'm going up to Twin Towns. It's been and John and I we're very close mates. Never in the 25 years we've worked together, I don't think we've ever had a harsh word with each other, and it's been a great experience. I mean, we played for 3.5 months in New York. In 2014, 2016, we did Japan for 2 weeks, which was an incredible experience. And we did London, and I toured it in 2016 with another guy doing the lead role, a guy called Danny Taylor, who was a Scouser from Liverpool. Yeah, it's been great, and it's been a wonderful experience.
And why John Lennon originally? Like you said, you like.
Well, that was John's call. He was a huge fan of John Lennon's. I grew up being more of a fan of the Stones than I did of the Beatles. And but having said that, when I turned my attention to John Lennon's writing, I was staggered by his genius. I mean, I look, as I've gone older, I've become a lot softer in my criticism of, artists. And I just heard about a friend of mine when saw Paul McCartney play and saying what a magnificent concert it was. He's just amazing. And of course he is amazing. The guy's incredible. But John Lennon to me was a character in it was John Lennon and George Harrison. I'm also a big fan of George Harrison's writing. He was a great writer. He was the unsung hero of the Beatles, I believe. But they were an extraordinary band. And, well, they're phenomena. I mean, I look in the paper, there's always some Beatles show somewhere going on in Australia at the Opera House. There's just been one. Now there's another one coming in called the Beatle Boys. And they do it with the symphony orchestra. And, it's pretty amazing. It's still a huge music impetus in people's lives, People love the Beatles, and they were great songs, great songwriters, incredible. And when you look at these kids, I mean, when they first met, Lennon was 17. I think McCartney was around 14. They'd both lost their mothers. Paul had lost his mother with cancer, and John's mother was run over by an off-duty drunken policeman. So these kids, and they grew up in Liverpool. And if you know Liverpool, particularly at that time, Liverpool had the living shit bombed out of it during World War II. And post-war, it was in a terrible state of depression. If you ever look at a shot of anyone in Liverpool post-war, you'll never see a fat person. They're all malnourished. And so these kids, they all came from Liverpool. Liverpool's a strange place too, because it was the first port of call for all the albums. Well, vinyl came to America. It came to Liverpool first. So it had a very strong rhythm and blues influence on music there. So these kids, when they went to Berlin, they'd be playing like 6 sets, half an hour each, and their harmonies would have, they worked really hard, doing covers, of course. And then it came to that time when they started writing, and they had already had this magic formula of having played for so long together. And it just grew from there. And I think George Martin was a great influence for McCartney and Lennon in regards to songwriting and also arranging. And these are two things they carried through them through their whole recording career. So they're an extraordinary group of musicians that got together and stayed together. Well, they didn't actually, the last 3 albums, I mean, Abbey Road, Sgt. Pepper's, and the White Album, which are the albums that I really got into, to be quite frank with you, and Revolver to a certain degree, they were never played. They never performed them live. They were, and although I've actually been the MD for a couple of those, I did a White Album and I did the Abbey Road and Sgt. Pepper's, where I MD'd, and I had an 18-piece band on stage, and we duplicated the sound of that album. And when you really go into that album, it's an incredible piece of music, So yeah, how do I get into it? I got into it for John. I started realizing the magnificence of the genius, and then it coupled with McCartney. But Lennon wrote by himself. Although their copyright was shared, they used to write separately. And sometimes they join up on particular songs. Day in the Life's a classic example. Most of it was written by John, and the middle 8 bit was written by Paul. And it was kind of like they were put together. I think George Martin had a lot to do with that. So yeah, that's the story with that Lennon Through a Glass Onion. It came from John's push, and John does it so well. I mean, he sings like Lennon. He's a great actor too. I mean, he's a fantastic actor. So it's great. It's a great duo.
And the Beatles, obviously one of the most legendary bands of all time. I've heard a lot of musicians say that it's very challenging to make a band work, to have everyone on the same page and keeping a band together. So what are some of your tips and tricks that have worked for you, I guess, in keeping a harmonious band and keeping a band together?
Well, I think if you're really young, and I think it's best when you're really young to have a band together, is that you, first of all, you're all friends. You got to be close friends. It's not just, about the music. You got to have that kind of glue that mateship brings to any kind of joint effort. I think it's good if you've got great players in the band, and you need one guy to be the driving force, because nothing happens by itself. So you need a guy who's like, I think that guy was McCartney in the Beatles. He would be the guy going to the studio after Ringo had done a drum track, and he'd redo the drums. He lived in the studio all the time. So it's a hard thing keeping a band together. And there's no magic formula. I can't think of anything really. I think it's just one of those things that if it works or it doesn't work. And it's personally, as I've got older, it's harder to have what you might call a band. It's why I work basically solo. It's difficult. Difficult having a band when you're older. So it's a thing when you're young. It's great to have, and also you need a lot of passion. It gets harder to find that passion when you get older, and that's when you got to really dig deep. When you're younger, you've got a lot more energy. The world is like an oyster to you. Sometimes when you get old, you get somewhat skeptical, or somewhat even worse, cynical about life and what it has to offer you. And that's a dark area that you try and avoid. It's like you got to put razor wire around your heart. Stop falling into that place, that dark spot, where you'll be consumed, getting back to depression, So, yes, I think if you're in a band, you've got to have passion, you've got to have a driving force. One of the guys has got to be the leader, makes it all happen, and you've got to be mates.
Yeah, great tips there. Well, we know how hard it is for a lot of people just to keep a relationship with a partner going, let alone, a whole band.
Well, I've been married. I'm married 3 times and divorced. All
right.
I know all about that.
Yeah.
Well, actually, Leonard Cohen always said the hardest sacrament for him ever was marriage. Found that a really difficult one.
Yes. Well,
sorry.
I put a comment on Facebook a while ago and just actually a question. And I said, do you believe it's natural for human beings to be monogamous for life? Because if you look at a lot of animal species, a lot of them are not monogamous for life, right? And in fact, there's been studies showing that, yes, it is natural for people to be monogamous for 8 years. And if they have a child, it extends 4 years per child. And so if you look at how long a lot of marriages last, it's generally, if you've got 2 kids, 16 years, 3 kids, 20 years, that seems to be about the going rate. So it was very interesting, the feedback that came back, or the comments that came back from that question on Facebook. So in your opinion, do you think it's natural for human beings to be monogamous?
Yeah, God, geez, that's a hard question. Well, it's pretty easy to be not monogamous when you're older. It's easier, not easy, really easy, but it's easier. We live in a pretty, pretty sexual society. I mean, a mate of mine had a conversation with me last night. He has a legal practice, and he always comes in and kisses his girls and things like that. And he said, this sexual harassment thing, it's really got me worried. I mean, he doesn't touch up anyone, but he's very affectionate with all the people who he works with. And we live in a society now that's almost like Victorian in its attitude towards sex. And yet the other side of the coin is so sexually upfront, like it was interesting when I saw the Golden Globes the other night. They were all wearing black to support this Me Too thing, you know. And what made me laugh at was the hypocrisy of these women wearing virtually no clothes at all, albeit in black, just covering their nipples and the bare back of their arse showing. And you think, well, hello. I mean, you know, this is a pretty sexual outfit. And, of course, my daughter, who's really pro this Me Too thing, said, well, Dad, a woman should be able to wear what she wants and you shouldn't have to think like that. Well, I said, yeah, but that's not the way, you know, human nature is. When a woman's wearing bugger all, I mean, of course, that's not an open invitation for you to be, you know, push yourself onto someone. But anyway, we live in a kind of a different time, and and I can't think of a time when I've lived when it's been like this. I mean, I lived through the 60s, the whole sexual, all that stuff, you know, and it's come around a complete circle now. And it's an interesting time we're living in.
Well, as a musician, you know, a lot of musicians get hit on, of course, by you know, people in the audience, and you probably you have no shortage of advances, I'm sure. So how do you handle the, you know, or how have you handled in your time in the music industry?
Well, I just hang out with the band. You know, it's it's kind of the thing. At the end of the gig, we just hang out with the band, and don't really, you know, take on any of that stuff whatsoever.
Yeah.
And I know I have a partner. My partner, we've been together for 5 years, and we're monogamous, you know, and I'm very happy in that scenario. And yeah, I mean, it's a really lovely time in my life, actually.
Nice. Well, my folks have been together 47 years, so it is, you know, I think
43 years.
47 years. 47 years they've been together.
Oh my God!
That's so rare nowadays. They married in 1970, actually coming on to 48 years. So they've made it work. You know, it's been tough, I think, at times, but they've hung in there, and you know, they've stuck by their wedding vows of monogamy.
Great, that's fantastic. Are they Catholic?
No, they were Greek Orthodox originally. They actually grew up in Turkey as Greek Orthodox.
Greek Orthodox from Turkey. So they were all kicked out in 1963, were they?
Well, no, they left in 1970. My dad's dad was Ukrainian, so he was never really accepted as a Turk, even though he was born in Turkey, because they were Christians in Turkey. Well, if you've seen the movie The Promise, you'll see what happened to the Armenians, the Assyrians, and the Greeks. Basically, during World War I, a lot of them got wiped out because they were Christians, and there was a big Armageddon, where about 3 million people got killed in Turkey by the Muslims. Because they were Christians. So there's a whole history there as well. So my dad couldn't wait to get out of Turkey, and he came to Australia in 1970, and I actually grew up in Sydney. I was born in Sydney and grew up in Sydney for the first 18 years of my life or so. And now I live on the Gold Coast. So that's
a wonderful story. It's a wonderful story.
It is a good story. It's got a happy
I read a great book. I read a wonderful book called Middlesex, which it delved into that part when the Greeks in Turkey, I forget, but there was that kind of thing where it was almost like race, destroying a whole race of people that was going on at that time. It's a great book. I recommend it, Middlesex.
Right, okay, that sounds good. Sounds very good. You have The Promise? For those watching this, The Promise, check it out. And I'm just laughing because my cat has just walked across the screen here. So
is that your cat?
That was my cat. That was the back of my cat just walking across there. So so interesting. We have, and we're very blessed in Australia. We have such a great multicultural mix of people, and I think it's
it's a great country. It's a great country.
Definitely lucky here in many ways. So anyway, moving along. So back to your show. So the Tom Waits show, let's talk a little bit about that one. So how long did that one take to put together, and how much of a run did that show get?
Well, I put that together in about 2001. I played at a little theatre up the road here in King's Cross. And then I took it to New York in 2005. and I was playing it off and on. I did the Montreal Jazz Festival with it. I did the Edinburgh Festival with it. And I played basically in New York in a theatre called the Soho Playhouse. And in 10, Tom Waits closed me down, saying he gave me what is called a cease and desist order in the business, stating that I was impersonating him. And the theatre owner and manager wanted to go to court, and me being a lawyer and knowing the intricacies of involving yourself in a lawsuit, I said, no, I don't want to know about it. So I dropped the show, and I've only just been starting to do it again. I do it with Ian Dury's music, some Randy Newman, and even Tim Buckley, and I mix it all up. But I'm a big fan of Tom Waits' music. I was very upset by the whole, situation that occurred there in 2010. And of course, he said I impersonate him. And as I said to the lawyer, I said, look, he's not the only guy in the world with a gravelly voice. Because I have a gravelly voice, I feel as if, it's kind of music suited for my voice. And he said, you even dress like him. I said, we share the same tailor, St Vincente de Paolo. And that went straight over his head. And he said, you even look like him. I said, I take exception to that. I'm a much more handsome man than Tom Waits.
Yes.
Anyway, that was a very disappointing period of my life. And also it was a very tough time because I had to do a show, put a show together that was called The Belly of a Drunken Piano. That was totally original. So for 2 weeks, I was in this apartment in New York just writing and performing and stuff, and then put together with a band. And it was a really tough time.
So how did you pull yourself through that?
I just had to do it, I just had to do it. I didn't have any choice in the matter. And look, the show did as well as the show did, just as well as the Tom Waits show would have done. But it was, it was just really physically exhausting, distressing, mentally exhausting too, because I had to write and perform the same in a period of 2 weeks, which is bugger all the time to put something together. And but mind you, there's one thing about having a designated time to have something finished. It really makes you sit down, and I always like to have that, a particular date for something to start, because you work towards that date and you have no excuses. You can't just like take a week off and go somewhere. You've got to buckle down and make it happen. Yeah,
that's true. Deadlines are good for that. And you've also worked on, they're great for that. And TV scores. You've done quite a few TV scores: Ocean Star, Trap, The Cut, Second Chance, and Easter Endurance for Compass.
So that's a sign I haven't done for a long time. I miss it a bit. I must admit that I'm more kind of a troubadour than I am a person sitting in a studio behind a screen. I've got a film coming out, my daughter's. I score all her films. And I find that a wonderful experience, sharing that kind of art form with her. And it's a great thing. I love scoring, actually. Just haven't done it for a long time.
Okay. And you've also worked with Jackie Weaver as well?
I produced a show for Jackie. I wrote the music for it and ended up producing it for her. And I toured all around Australia. It's called The Blonde, the Brunette, and the Vengeful Redhead. And then after that, she did that Animal Kingdom. And, the next is all history. She's a big star now in the USA. So we've lost Jackie. But she's a fabulous bird. She really is. She's a great woman. And, God, she's so clever. She's a really clever woman. So and she's a great actress.
And then also 2013, you produced and starred in Tuxedo and The Little Black Dress, a musical.
Oh, yeah, that's a musical I wrote with Louis.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we did that at the Chapel Off Chapel. That was fun. I was acting in that and wrote the music, and Louis wrote the words, and it was great. That was a great time. great fun.
And that was in Melbourne. And then My Leonard Cohen, it says you started here in 2014. So about 3-4 years ago now.
Yeah.
And with the My Leonard Cohen show, how long did it take you to put that together?
It took a while. You know, a lot of reading of books, and then sitting with the songs for a while and deciding how I was going to do them. And because, you see, the thing is, Leonard, he was a guitar player and I'm a piano player. So, you know, and the style that he played guitar-wise is called a tremolo style. Interesting story, actually. He was taught guitar. He saw this guy in the playground once playing guitar, and he noticed all the girls were hanging around him. So he came up to this guy and asked him to teach him how to play guitar. This guy was a Spaniard. He didn't speak French or English. So he would illustrate to him how to play it just by putting his fingers on the fretboard and teaching him a style. And he taught him a style called the tremolo style. And that tremolo style stuck with Cohen for a lot of his songwriting. So, and it's more of a guitar thing than it is a piano thing. So interpreting his songs meant going to the piano and seeing, it's kind of a pageatic style. But with the piano, I wanted to take it somewhere else. So it was like a lot of time playing with songs, revising his background or his life story, what I thought was interesting about his life and what would work well with the songs. And it changes from time to time, you know, I'll tell different stories. This Augustine guy, this is most probably also part of the depression of Cohen. One day he didn't turn up for his lesson, and Cohen rang the boarding house where he was staying, and he found out the guy committed suicide the night before. And that stayed with Leonard for quite a while, that whole experience. So, you know, and he grew up in Montreal. I mean, I don't know, in this Arctic freeze that's happened in the northern part of America and in Europe, you have to be there to really understand that cold. It's unbelievable cold. I was in Montreal when it was minus 22 degrees Celsius. It's unbelievably cold. It burns, because I got hair in my nostrils, it didn't burn the skin out of my nose, but my girlfriend at the time, it burned all the skin inside her nose, breathing the air, and it was so cold. You can't touch metal. It's a whole new way of life. These up in northern Canada and even up in northern state, USA, New York State, I mean, you have to keep your car running all night, otherwise it won't run the next day. It is so cold. So, you know, and it's dark. It gets dark like at 4 o'clock. It's dark up to about 10. So if you're suffering from depression in any shape or form, not a good place to live.
No. Let's come to Australia.
Yeah. Well, those people need luggage. Get the fuck out of there and come down here. Yeah.
Gosh, no wonder they're depressed. Absolutely, I get that. Wow, I really can't handle the cold at all. I must say, I would much rather go to the Whitsundays than go skiing. So,
yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah. So that's not my bag. But yeah, I mean, you know, Famous Blue Raincoat. Now that is an absolute classic song.
Yeah,
so
I love that song.
What's and there's a great version with Jennifer Warnes out there, which I absolutely love as well.
Right.
So what's the story behind that, Famous Blue Raincoat?
Well, it's a story about a love triangle, and he's got a very close mate who's obviously had a love affair with his girlfriend, and the guy's a junkie, and he's obviously a character who's quite charismatic too. And I think in that last verse when he says, I guess I forgive you. What is it? God. I've got a mental block. It's 4 in the morning, the end of September. I'm riding in now just to see if you're better. New York is cold, but I like where I'm living. There's music on Clinton Street all through the evening. I hear that you're building your little house deep in the desert. You're living for nothing. I hope you're keeping some kind of record. And Jane came by with a lock of your hair. She said that you gave it to her, not that you planned to go clear. Did you ever go clear? And the last verse, so what can I tell you, my brother, my killer? What can I possibly say? I guess I forgive you. I guess that I miss you. I'm glad you got in my way. If you ever come by here for Jane or for me, your enemy's sleeping and his woman is free. And thanks for the trouble you took from her eyes. I thought it was there for good, so I never tried. And Jane came by with a lock of hair. And that's a wonderful thing. This guy obviously took this woman from an area of depression that he thought was always going to be with her. And that's why he says, thanks for getting in my way, you know, and relieving her of the depression that always lived in her life. It's a great song. And you know the weird thing about the song, he ends it, and Jane came by with a lock of your hair. She said that you gave it to her the night that you planned to go clear. Sincerely, L. Cohen. Now, I can't think of any songwriter who's put his name into a song. It's extraordinary.
It is.
It's an extraordinary song because it's in the format of a letter, you know? It's an extraordinary song. I love that song.
Yeah, I do too. It always.
I do that in the show. Yeah, okay. I do that one in the show.
Brilliant.
Yeah, and I do a different version to it than to Leonard's. No. But you know, I love that song.
Beautiful. Yeah, it is absolute classic. And a lot of people probably haven't heard about it out there, but they will get a treat when they come and see you. So, because there's so much we could talk about. But your show is happening at Twin Towns this Saturday. Now, how long is the show going for?
It goes for about an hour and a half.
Okay. And it starts at 8 p.m. Queensland time, I've been told, because Twin Towns.
Queensland time, I believe. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Twin
it's
Towns
quite
is officially
confusing because it's in Coolangatta, which is on Sydney time, but it runs on Brisbane time.
Yes, that's right. Twin Towns is on the New South Wales side of the street. The other side of the street is.
But it runs on Queensland time.
That's right, Queensland time. So 8 p.m. Queensland time. Tickets are $39 for anyone who wants to go, and they can get tickets at the door, I was told today, by Twin Towns. So if people want to get tickets, they just go to twintowns.com.au and check that out, and they can also get a show and stay package as well from $313 for 2 people. So $39, that's a great price for ticket only. I think it'll be a really educational show as well, and I think you're going to help people travel to other places maybe they haven't traveled to for a while emotionally. I would say, Stuart. We talked a little bit before about what you want people to get out of the show. What do you personally love about doing the show?
Oh, I love performing. I mean, and I love playing with this band. You know, I don't get that many chances to play with such magnificent musicians, and it's a pretty rich sound we have on stage, and it's awe-inspiring sometimes. Yeah, I really love performing this stuff.
And do you do a lot of original music as well?
Yeah, I do. Obviously not in this show.
Not in this show.
I've incorporated in this new version of Belly of a Drunken Piano quite a few of my original stuff, and which I'm really enjoy doing. And it's one day maybe I'll just do original music, which would be great. You know, it's getting an audience, of course, is a hard thing when you're doing your original music. But anyway, tuck.
Yes. and you'll be selling CDs, will you, at Twin Towns?
Yeah, I will be, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Of course, I'm going to be selling CDs.
Excellent. And will you be signing CDs for people?
Yeah, I sign CDs after the show, yeah.
Excellent. Okay,
it's great because that's when you get the feedback of the show. That's the best part of it.
Fantastic.
You get to meet your audience.
And so where to from here, Stewart? Once you do this My Leonard Cohen show, what's happening after that for you?
Yeah, that's a good story. I'm possibly doing My Leonard Cohen in New York. I'm in early negotiations with a theatre over there. And I'm writing with this guy in New York, this musical. So it'd be great for me to spend some time in New York and be like next to each other writing as opposed to dealing with emails and long distance calls. So, and I have a bit of a love of New York. I think it's a great city and I haven't been there for quite a while. And I wouldn't be going there until it's May or June because it's too damn cold there otherwise. I'm like you, I don't want to go into the cold. New York's bitterly cold at present, you know. It's tough when it's cold.
Yes, wait till June.
Yeah, wait till June. Yeah, June's a good time. Yeah.
Wait till it's winter here and go when it's their summer. And what about any advice for people who have depression out there? What tips would you give anyone who's maybe watching this who feels a bit down every now and then?
I think it's important that they, well, you know, it depends on what kind of depression. You know, there's some people who've got no friends. That's a very sad affair. I think you should involve yourself in some kind of community-orientated kind of activity to make friends. I think sitting at home watching television and various other things can be an extremely devastating experience. I think it's important that you become active in life and not just sit on your ass and delve into your own depression. Depression's got so many angles on it. And there's no quick fix, but obviously there's various agencies that have, you know, telephones and things like that you can ring people. But I think the most important thing is to get away from yourself. Don't live too much inside your head. You know, the Buddhists have a saying of cut your head off. It's important not to think too much. There's a wonderful book by a guy called, what's it called? Jesus. There's a guy called Tolle, T-O-L-L-E, and it's the power of something. It's not the power of one. Could be the power of one. I don't know. Anyway, it's a great book. It's about when you're walking down the street, as opposed to living inside your head, look at the surrounding environment. So you've got this thought in your head that's bugging you. Look at a tree. Notice the bark. Notice the leaves in the tree. I did this when I was having a really rough time in New York, and I used to walk to the theatre, and I used to notice all the different aspects of the different shops. So as opposed to living inside my head, I remove myself from my head and look at the surrounding environment. I think that's a really good thing to do in your life. Watch your steps. See how you're walking. See how you're placing your feet. All those kind of things. Bring yourself back to yourself as opposed to inside your head. Get rid of that feelings that you always delve back into your head. Your thought process can be a destructive thing. It's full of phantoms and ghosts and things like that. A lot of it's imagined. So, yeah, I feel it's very important to notice your environment, keep out of your head. Obviously, you've got to go into your head, particularly when you're, you know, involving yourself in some creative thought or even some kind of intelligent thought. But you don't want to live too much inside your head. And get out of the house. Get out of the house. Go for walks. Try and find a place to live where there's some sense of community in it. That's a hard thing to find in Sydney these days. You know, people live next door to each other in home units and apartment blocks and don't even know their neighbour. I think it's, you know, you've got to stretch yourself a bit.
Yeah.
To have a full life.
Yeah, I think they're brilliant tips. And I think also, you know, being grateful, you know, coming to a point of appreciation for your life. You know, there's people that stress about what shoes to wear, and there's people out there without feet. So just remembering that things can always be worse. And
yeah, I mean, you just have to look at the news every night and hear about those poor people living in Yemen, Syria, all those godforsaken places where there's such poverty and such devastation. I mean, yeah, I mean, we live in a great time here in this country.
Yeah, whenever I feel down, I like to hop on YouTube and watch videos by a guy called Nick Vujicic. And he's a guy with no arms and no legs, and he's one of the most inspiring speakers out there. Absolutely phenomenal guy. So if you look up the guy with no arms and no legs, Nick Vujicic, and watch some of his videos, you'll be blown away. He's absolutely awesome. So back to you. We do need to wrap up the show. It's been absolutely awesome speaking to you, Stewart. Any final words you want to say for anyone?
No, I'd just like to see them come to the show. It'd be wonderful, and be very much appreciated the time I've spent with you, Aldwyn, and yeah. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. And how can people connect with you and get some of your products?
Oh, good.
Have you got a website?
Yeah, the website's pretty well screw-blued and tattooed. StewartD'Arrietta@gmail.com. My email address, StewartD'Arrietta@gmail.com.
StewartD'Arrietta@gmail.com. And to come to the show at Twin Towns, My Leonard Cohen, it's only $39 for a ticket. Starts 8 p.m. Queensland time this Saturday. Go to twintowns.com.au or turn up at the door from 8 p.m. Queensland time. And I will be there, and I can't wait to see you, Stewart. So,
oh, great. We'll make sure we'll catch up after the show.
Yeah, I'd love to. Thank you. I will. I'll definitely come and say hello.
We'll be having a drink somewhere in one of those bars there somewhere.
Yeah, sounds brilliant. Thank you for the music. I love what you do. I loved your show years ago, your shows years ago, and you're an absolute legend in circles. I think to be able to survive in the entertainment industry as long as you have too, you've done some remarkable things. So congratulations on all your success, and here's to much more success too around the corner, and keep doing what you
and likewise to you. Likewise to you,
so
particularly with this particular arm of marketing that you're doing. It's pretty brave stuff.
Thank you very much. Yes, it's live video broadcast, so when phones go off in the background, everything's it's as it is. I'm all about truth reporting, and I think people are sick of the mass media lies out there. So that's part of what I'm doing, is helping to lift people's spirits with positive news, positive media, and that's part of what we've done today. So thank you, Stewart. Thank you so much. Thanks to everyone who's watching this. If you've enjoyed what you've seen, then please share the love, comment. If you've got any questions, feedback, we'd love to see it. Just pop it under this video on YouTube. Subscribe to my channel, Aldwyn Altuney, if you haven't already. And come and support My Leonard Cohen with Stewart D'Arrietta and his 7-piece band this Saturday night at Twin Towns. Thanks so much. Thanks again, Stewart. And we'll see you.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Thanks.
God bless. Cheers.
Bye for now. Thank you, you too. Bye.